Hey, what's going on everyone, and welcome back to the channel. So I've gotten a lot of questions lately on the parts you need to put a th400 behind a mod motor, and specifically in a New Edge or an SN95 car. So today's video is going to be about the parts that you need, and we're going to go from the front to the back of the car, and I'm going to show you guys the parts I have. These necessarily aren't the parts that you have to buy. There are other parts out there. There's different manufacturers of those parts. These are the parts I have. They work really well for me. So we'll go ahead and get started. So starting up here at the front of the car, the first thing that you're going to need when you put a th400 in one of these cars, whether it's an automatic or a manual, is you're going to need an external transmission cooler. The transmission cooler I have right here is a TrueCool 20,000 pound gross vehicle weight cooler. As you can see right here on the left side of the cooler, these come with barbed fittings, and I actually had -6 fittings welded on so I could run AN lines right here. You can buy other coolers that have AN fittings on them. Just whenever I bought this cooler, this one didn't, so I had to modify it. You're also going to need some type of line. A lot of people swear by hard line. I didn't feel like running hard line, so I ran a -6 braided line. This fluid's going to get pretty hot, so I would recommend that you run a braided steel line and not a braided nylon line, just because the braided steel can handle a little bit more heat than the nylon can. So this is just a Summit brand braided steel -6 line that runs all the way back over to the transmission. So as you can see, the transmission does not have a torque converter in it right now, but that is also something that you're going to need. You need a torque converter that's specific to a th400, and I have this is a PTC 9.5 inch. This is like the top of the line PTC converter before you start talking about bolt together converters. And this is just your standard th400 9.5 inch converter from a lot of different manufacturers, but PTC is probably one of the best in the business in the drag racing community. So since this is just your standard th400 torque converter, to bolt this up to your modular motor, you're going to need a pilot adapter. So what this does is it necks down this large pilot on the torque converter down to the small pilot that goes on the back of the modular crankshaft. This is made by JW, and you can get this as a kit. So you can get this pilot adapter, and you're also going to need a flex plate. This is also JW. This is a JW The Wheel flex plate. It's SFI certified. Once again, you can get these from different places, but I would just recommend, if you're doing a high performance application, that you go with this JW flex plate. There's not really a better flex plate out there. So you can get the flex plate and the pilot crank adapter together, and you also get bell housing adapter right here. So as you can see, this is not the factory bell housing that came on the th400. The factory bell housing will not bolt up to a modular motor, so you have to go to a JW bell housing. Now there are other manufacturers for these bell housings, but none of them are as good as the JW, just in the way that this bolts to the front pump of the transmission. So if you're going to get one, just go ahead and get the JW. You can get the bell housing, the pilot crank adapter, and the flex plate all as a package, and you have everything you need. So basically the way this thing works is the stock bell housing gets chopped off like right at the pump, and this bell housing, as you can see right there, bolts onto the pump, and it just has these little, you just put some RTV around the bolts and it seals up. So moving on from there, you guys have seen the transmission in other videos, but of course you're going to need a transmission, and you can have whoever you want build the transmission. I have my good friend here locally, Cameron Powers, built this transmission for me, and there's varying builds that you can go with depending on how much horsepower you're going to put down. Also, forgot to talk about, you're also going to need a dipstick, as you can see right up here. Low Car sells a nice braided dipstick. You can run a stock factory dipstick, or you can run an eBay dipstick like I have. This dipstick was given to me, so I'm just running it for now. Moving on back, and this is probably the part that everyone is always asking me questions about is what kind of cross member do I run to make the th400 work at my car. So this is a Stifler's cross member, and the cool thing about this cross member is that you can put almost any transmission you can think of in the car. All you have to do is readjust these little plates right here and the bushings up here, and basically you can flip this bracket over. You can readjust which side this bushing sets on, and you can also readjust these spacers. There's a spacer under here that you can't see, it's a lot thinner, and you can move those around, and you can pretty much put any transmission, any basic transmission you can think of off the top of your head, you can fit in this car. So if you're going to get a transmission cross member, just go ahead and get this Stifler's cross member. Moving on back, you're going to need a new yoke for the transmission. This is a Sonax chromoly yoke for a 1350 U-joint. So if you're going to put down any kind of power to the ground, you're going to be launching on the trans brake, any kind of stuff like that, you really want to go to a 1350 style U-joint. So it's also good to go ahead and get this yoke because it allows you to measure for the custom drive shaft that you're going to need. As you can see right here, this drive shaft is a 3.5-inch chromoly drive shaft from PST out of Florida, and I can't remember the length of it off the top of my head, but you're going to have to do a custom drive shaft whenever you put a th400 in. And the way that you do that is there's a lot of videos you can look up on YouTube, but the short of it is you put the yoke into the transmission and you bottom it out in the transmission, and then you pull the yoke out 1 inch and leave it there. And then what you do is you measure from the center of the U-joint on the yoke here back to the center of the U-joint on the rear end back there. And you want to do that as many times as you need to get an accurate measurement. I usually do three measurements, and if they're all within, they all should be the same. If they are, then I know my measurement's good. So not really part of the swap, but for anyone that's drag racing, you need to have a drive shaft safety loop in the car. So we'll move on back to the back of the drive shaft back here, and I'll show you guys what I did to the rear end. Okay, so we're back here at the rear end of the car, and you can just get a better view of how this drive shaft fits and runs through this area of the car right here. So back here, for most of you guys that are going to be moving from like a stock setup like I had, you'll notice that the yoke back here on the transmission, on the pinion, right, or not the transmission, the rear end, on the pinion right here is different, because normally you have like a flat flange back here that you bolt the drive shaft to. Well, I would just recommend you go ahead and change to something like this. This is a strange engineering piece right here, and it's also for a 1350 style U-joint, which is going to be a lot bigger than your stock 1310 or your 1330 style U-joint that you're going to have on your stock Mustang. So once again, you just need to go ahead and upgrade to this and upgrade to a 1350 U-joint on the drive shaft. Some of you guys might not necessarily need a 3.5-inch chromoly drive shaft. I have this 3.5-inch chromoly drive shaft because of the critical speed that it gets to, because of the high RPMs I'm revving. I'm revving anywhere from 7,500 to 8,000 RPM. You can get away with a smaller diameter drive shaft, or even just a steel drive shaft, which is going to be considerably cheaper than something like this. Or you can even run an aluminum drive shaft, although I'm not a huge fan of aluminum drive shafts. So, of the puzzle you're going to need when putting a th400 in one of these cars, and is going to be a shifter. I have a Precision Performance Product shifter. There's a lot of different shifters out there on the market for a th400, and you guys have seen in some of my other videos. I have this shifter because it allows me to still push the shifter forward even though I have a reverse manual valve body in the transmission. So this shifter basically reverses everything. So park is in the back instead of the front. These shifters are really nice, and if you buy the higher end version of this shifter, it has an air shift capability on it, and a couple of other things also that come with it. Like I said, you've got B&M, you've got Hurst, you've got a couple other different, like TCI, that make shifters for th400. So the combinations of the shifters out there are endless, really. Alright guys, so that was just a quick down and dirty of the stuff that you need to get when you're putting a th400 in your Mustang behind your mod motor. I hope this video helped you guys out some. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to put them down in the comment section. Also, comment, like, and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys later.